Okay, hey everybody. Looks like we may be getting up and going live. Looks like things are are not so good. Getting lots of error messages from both Google and YouTube about whether or not this is actually working. So I'm going to keep trying this for a few minutes, but if things don't catch up and things don't improve pretty rapidly, I'm going to have to cut this one off, and I'll just record this video and then post it later today. So I appreciate all of your patience that you're standing by and trying to work with me here. There are some things that are well beyond my control. Getting the Google messages and the YouTube messages that obviously don't make you feel real good when you're trying to do a live broadcast. But anyway, those of you who have joined in, I appreciate that, and I'll get right into this stuff after a few minutes. I want to give it just a minute before I get too deep into this. And if not, if something happens on this live broadcast that we can't do what we want to do, I'm going to post the link to the new video down below. And I'll put it all in the playlist, so you'll be able to watch the 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way through to episode 12. You'll be able to do that from there. So I appreciate everybody's patience. Hopefully this doesn't lag and do too much too poorly. But I'll give it a few more minutes to see if everything can catch up, or a few more seconds, I should say. And I'm gonna pop a little screenshot of the things that I'm looking at. Here am I behind the scenes. And first, I tried to be able to stream in a little bit of a higher resolution, and that didn't seem to be working out very well. So I downgraded the resolution a little bit and see if that would help. It didn't exactly seem to help things, and still got the same error messages as I did before, but yeah, well, we'll see. So I apologize for everything else. Okay, so I'm going to try and get going into a couple minutes here and to a few things that were the main points of today. And this particular, we're talking about real estate agent safety. Not really allowed to say realtor safety because I am not doing this in association with or with any knowledge, consent, or otherwise affiliation or association with the National Association of Realtors. They've come after me twice for saying realtor safety and telling me to correct it and say real estate agent safety. So I want to be very, very clear. I am not, while I am a member of the National Association of Realtors, this particular program, this particular content is in no way associated with the National Association of Realtors. They are not associated with me on this, and I am not associated with them, and for good reason. So getting right into that, the topic of today, we talked about yesterday, just kind of a broad overview of what we're going to cover. Going to do 3 sessions a week, 2 on Facebook Live and 1 on YouTube Live. That's this one right here. And we're going to get into a variety of different subjects and topics when it involves real estate agent safety, real estate safety, that you just don't get anywhere else. You don't hear anywhere else. Mainly because that's not the National Association of Realtors. It's not their job. It's not your broker's job. It's not your association's job. It's not what they do. It's not what they're trained in. That is not their line of work. In all other areas of real estate, you tell your clients and everybody that you work with to seek professionals, to seek those who have the expertise and the experience in that particular field. But for some reason, when it comes to agent safety, personal security, we tend to look at our brokers or our association for solutions. Maybe we'll bring in a police officer to give a piece of block of instruction, but that is a different line of work than personal security and executive protection and those types of things. They mean well. All of those folks mean well, but they just don't have the specific tool set in their repertoire. They don't have the experience that's actually relevant when it comes to keeping people safe. Brokers, real estate agents, they don't do it. Law enforcement, they typically get there after something bad happens. Their main role is to arrest the bad guys after they've already done something and to respond to a scene after someone's already called 911. Well, the purpose of real safety and real personal security as it relates to this are those who are trying to prevent that initial incident from happening in the first place. 911 is not an option. 911 is a desperation. Once that's happened, a whole lot of other things have already happened that led up to that event. And that's one of the major things that I hope you can take away from this particular piece of safety training is that you really want to focus in on all of that stuff. We talked about it a little bit yesterday, that left of boom stuff. You don't want the event to happen. You don't want that boom. You don't want that incident to occur. You want to prevent it to occur from occurring all the way down here. And that's what I hope, one of the major components and major things I hope you take away from is I want you to focus in on those things that are far left of boom, far left of the incident ever happening. Not just something that, not just what you do after something bad has happened, not how to deploy pepper spray, how to get in a fist fight, how to fire your weapon, how to contact the police, where to go when something bad happens. That's not the type of stuff I want you to focus in on. I'm hoping that you focus in on those things that happen ahead of time. So with that, today's main topic is the illusion of safety, the safety illusion, because what we deal with on a regular basis is this idea that people say, and then, again, people mean well. This is not that people don't mean well. It's just they don't know what they don't know. And that you say that to someone, stay safe, drive safe. What exactly does that mean? How do you do that? As if safety is some form of a destination. It's some, I call it the safety utopia that doesn't exist. There's no state. There is no sense of being. There's no place where safety is perfect. It just doesn't exist. So there's no place that you can go where you can be completely safe all the time. That doesn't exist. And what does that mean exactly anyway? We're always living in some form of flux. There's no real steady state of safety. All things are either a little bit more or a little bit less than they were a few seconds ago. It doesn't matter what you are doing, whether you're driving a car, whether you're cooking dinner, whether you're walking down the stairs. All it takes is a momentary lapse of safety and your entire situation changes. So I don't want you to focus in on the idea of safety. In fact, you'll see me allude to this as we go through the training, but I want to move away from the idea of safety and move more toward an idea of security, because this fallacy, this safety utopia, it's just impossible. It doesn't exist. It's not real. There's no place that you can go that all of a sudden safety lives there. There's no, crazy town in a bubble out in the Midwestern states, out somewhere in Iowa, where safety is perfect and everybody lives in a happy environment. There were some TV shows like that, and of course that was pure fiction. But I want you to move away from those ideas that you can be safe, that you can do things safe, because nothing is safe. In my time in Baghdad, doing personal security missions for high-ranking officials, being personally responsible for planning, conducting, and leading over 600 personal security missions protecting high-ranking officials on some of the most dangerous streets and some of the most dangerous buildings and places in the world. We had a saying, and this was given to us by our operations NCO, and I thought it was very, very eloquent. But I'm going to have to. I'm gonna scale it down a little bit because it was pretty fierce. You'll understand what I mean in a second. It's like when it comes to providing personal security, particularly in a dangerous place, you have two options. You have those things that are dangerous and those things that are trucking dangerous. If you catch my drift, I didn't want to say the actual word that we used, but you have these two scales of things, right? You have everything that you do is dangerous, and some of the things that you have to do are very dangerous. That was an extreme scenario because of what we were doing and where we were doing it in that scenario. But in reality, that's exactly where we are anyway. There are some things that are less dangerous, but most things that we do involve some level of danger. Again, we'll talk about walking down the stairs, a momentary lapse, a trip, you're not paying attention to what you're doing, and boom, you're down the stairs. That doesn't mean that going up and down the stairs is inherently an unsafe act or an unsafe thing to do. It just means that something happened that took it from not very dangerous all the way over to very dangerous, depending on the situation. Same thing is true when you're driving down the road in your car. There's a variety of, there's a scale and a scope of things that are safe or unsafe. And there's never that static state of safety. It just doesn't exist. So what do we do when it comes to safety? We come up with all these different slogans where we say safety first. Well, the idea of safety first is just a lie. It is just a plain lie. Nobody ever does anything completely from a safety first standpoint. I can give you a great example. If safety were if safety were first and only the most important thing, would you ever drive? Would you ever drive? Would you ever leave your home or your place of business in an automobile and drive down the road in a 2,000-pound hunk of metal along with thousands of other people driving 2,000-pound hunks of metal at 60, 70 miles an hour while they're on their phone, digging on the radio, checking their lipstick in the mirror, and guys gelling their hair? Would you ever leave the house? Would you ever not come to a complete stop at every stop sign? Have you ever seen anybody run a red light? Have you ever seen anybody run a yellow light and really kind of just push it a little bit? Now they've even developed, if safety were first, you wouldn't have to develop these delayed green lights that pretty much every stoplight has now. You get the red light on one side and there's a delay before the green happens on the crossing light because so many people run red lights. You get red light cameras that catch people all the time. That's particularly relevant in our area, some of the areas in D.C. and Maryland that have red light cameras. So if safety were actually first, no one would ever leave their house in an automobile because it's inherently very unsafe because people run red lights, people drive fast, people aren't paying attention. Maybe they don't have the skill or the training or the capability, the reflexes necessary to drive a car. What about those, people complain about, the new drivers, the teenagers that are just getting their license for the first time. Are they any more or less dangerous than a senior citizen who probably shouldn't be driving anymore? Or somebody who has a medical condition? Or somebody who's taking medications, either prescription or otherwise, that means that they shouldn't be on the highway? Of course, safety first is a joke because we want to use our automobiles, we want to use our vehicles to get us from point A to point B in a safe manner, to be able to go to the store to pick up the groceries to bring them back to feed our family. We need to get into our vehicle in order to get to work and back. That's our priority. That's first. Family first, work first, whatever it is. Safety is not first. And if you actually do a little internal audit on your own way of life, I bet that safety falls pretty far near the bottom for most things that you do. Think about all the different things that you do. Do you always hold on to the handrail when you're coming up and down the stairs? I don't. Now, I do always wear my seatbelt when I'm driving on the road, when I'm in my truck. But, as for that, do I always come to a complete rolling stop at every stop sign? I don't know, probably not. I'm just thinking the one right here in our neighborhood. I don't know that I come to a complete stop every time. I mean, does that mean that, when I've got my family in the truck with me that I'm not placing safety at a pretty darn high priority? Of course it does. But it's something that we all struggle with. Safety is not first. And then you have manufacturing plants. You have places out there that say things like, hey, safety's first for us. In our manufacturing facility, safety is always a priority. Okay, but it really isn't, because if it were, then you wouldn't do those dangerous things. You wouldn't put people's lives at risk and workers' lives at risk if safety was in fact your primary responsibility, your primary job. It just wouldn't be the case. Now, this isn't a critique of anybody's driving or anybody's manufacturing methods or anything like that. This is just to point out that safety is not actually first. It's not a destination. It's not a place that you can go. It's not some lovely little destination that you can go to safety land. And when you get to safety land, everybody puts safety first. It's just not true. So all of this we're gonna pull all this together with some stuff a little bit later on. But the idea that safety is the destination, can't say that very well, and safety is first, it's just a dream. It's not real. It's not actually how the real world operates. And if you aren't concerned about how the real world operates, well, then that national association we talked about before has a whole bunch of safety training classes that they'd love to give you. Or they're going to give you a whole bunch of different things to tell you about how to stay safe, how to be more safe, whatever that means. Because again, what we're dealing with is a non-constant state. In the world of chemistry, I'm going to use the term, and then most of your eyes will flip back in your head, but then you'll come back after I explain it a little bit, you may have seen it. But the Bohr model, that's the Bohr model of the molecule of an atom. atom really, is that model where you have the nucleus in the center and you have all these rings of electrons going around. Looks like this big spirograph type looking thing. And this is how you did back in high school chemistry. You identify the nucleus and what was inside the nucleus and then where the electrons go. Kind of like the way we look at our solar system. You know, we always looked at it in this two-dimensional view where the Earth was, or the sun was in the middle, and then all the planets went around it in rings. But in reality, with both the Bohr model and the solar system, it's much messier than that. In fact, instead of having a Bohr model where it's a beautiful, perfect nucleus and these perfectly shaped rings as if they're perfect circles going around the nucleus, is just not accurate. It's more like a cloud. It looks more like this dirty, dusty cloud because there's more stuff inside of that atom that's not associated with the atom, but there's more stuff inside of there moving around and bumping around and bouncing around than you could possibly think of. So it's really, really cloudy. Now, what that means in the terms of safety is our vision, our perception of what an atom is this very neat, precise, artistically beautiful thing that involves a nucleus and these perfect rings. But life is messy. Life is not like that. The real atom doesn't really look like that. It looks like this really jumbled up cloud with all these different things going along. And the solar system, well, it also looks like that because it's not on this perfectly flat plane of all these different things. Some of the orbits are a little bit more elliptical. Some of them are a little bit more round. Some of them come a little bit higher, come a little bit lower. Because keep in mind, the sun is a sphere, is a round object, and not everything is operating on that perfect flat axis. Things are coming and moving. That's why the planets, when you look outside at night, they're moving at different directions across the sky at different times of the year and different times of the day, because nothing works on this perfectly flat plane. The real world is much messier. And it doesn't mean it's an ugly thing. It just means that you have to identify the real world for what it is. It's not particularly neat. It's not particularly safe, just by nature of things. And this is where we get to that idea of a work-life safety balance, as if that's even possible. So you hear this thing all the time about work-life balance. And again, I'm not real sure how that works out in the real world, because I know at certain points of the day, I'm very heavy into work. And then there are certain points of the day where I'm very heavy into family. And there's never a point. I can't think of a single point in the day when I'm sitting static in one spot. I have a perfect balance between life and work and safety and all these other things. It's just not real. It doesn't exist with anybody. We all tend to live on extremes. When we're with our family, we're with our family. When we try not to be too distracted with other things that we hold in our hands and things like that. When we're at work, we try to be focused on work. But these things keep pulling us backwards. But we're never sitting in one spot. We're never sitting in this perfect homeostasis, this perfect balance of safety and life and work. It doesn't exist because there's more than one priority in your life, right? There's work, there's life, there's safety, there's all these other things that are pulling at you, all these other priorities. So real life, the real world is very messy, and it doesn't involve this perfect sense of balance. So what does that mean when it comes to how can you be safe? I mean, I'm not trying to scare you into thinking that you can't be. You can. You just have to understand that the environment that you're working on, there's going to be a whole session on this, of what the 3 key elements of survival are. And one of them, big sneak preview, is the environment, is your environment. And how do you interact with the environment? Your environment. If you interact with your environment as if it's this perfectly static, stable thing, then, well, you're going to fail, because it's not. Life is messy. Life is very, everybody else out there doesn't have the same priorities you do. Just because you wear your seatbelt and drive the speed limit doesn't mean that everybody else does. And that changes how you should approach things. Just because you are an honest, upright citizen, it doesn't mean that everybody else is. And it doesn't mean that you should try and move them or get people to do other things. We get so upset these days because other people aren't living up to our own expectations, the things that we think that they should be doing. Rather than changing ourselves, we try to change the entire world. And when we get upset with the fact that we can't change the entire world. I mean, that's what I see on Facebook all the time. That's what I see in the social media. Everybody's upset that everybody else won't if the whole world just listened to me, it would be a better place. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think that's true at all. What I'd rather see you do is change yourself into the person that you would like to be when it comes to safety, when it comes to security, when it comes to the person that you are trying to be. Because remember, your job is real estate, but your mission is to go home every night. That's it. That's all there is to it. You can sell houses all day long, but if you don't go home every night, what's the point? What is the point? Are you willing to die to sell that next house? Now, there are a lot of careers and a lot of professions and a lot of things out there where people are willing to die for what they do and for why they're doing it. I'm just not so sure that selling a house is one of those things. Maybe it is to you, and if it is, great. I am not here to argue with you. What I'm here to do is to explain how the real world works and be able to give you some tools to be able to counteract it. So if you know that the world is a little bit messy, there's no perfect state of safety utopia, there's no perfect balance, and that safety first is really a lie. So what do? How do you deal with stuff? Well, let's take it in two very simple ideas. One is danger and one is risk. Because there's a difference between danger and risk. There's a difference between what is actually dangerous and how dangerous it is and whether or not there's a risk of something. Think about the weather forecast. Today it's raining like crazy off and on. That means that there's a risk or a chance, if you will, of rain. There is. But there's a risk or a chance of rain every day. Some days more than others. So if there's a greater chance of rain today, it's probably a good idea that I take appropriate measures to deal with that rain, whether that's a raincoat or inside work. Today's not a good day to cut the grass. It's not a good day to paint outside. It's not a good day to, go to the pool. It's about 65 degrees and raining, even though it's technically still summertime. So that's what risk, and that's how you that's how you associate it with it. That's why when you get up to I get up to this stop sign right down the corner here in my neighborhood, and I don't always come to a complete stop because, well, it's really low traffic area. And I take my time. I'm not saying I don't do that, but that's the risk. I'm willing to assume a greater level of risk by not coming to a complete stop in my neighborhood. Now, when I get out to the main highway out there, I just smashed into my mic over here. When I get out to the main highway over there, I do stop. I mean, if I don't come to a complete rolling stop, I certainly go extremely slow through that intersection because it's coming up a hill and down a hill on one direction, and it's hard to see with some of the vegetation, and vehicles tend to be going way faster than the speed limit. That, and there's guys on bicycles all the time out here. It's a much riskier. It contains a much higher level of risk at that stop sign than it does at the other one. So I approach that stop sign differently every day. Now, there are other stop signs where you can bet your boot I can't see at all. Maybe it's a blind intersection. Or maybe it's one of those big four-way stop signs, right? And everybody's coming through there, and you're not real sure that everybody at all of these stop signs understands how traffic is supposed to flow. So you know what? I'm just going to stop because I am not risking life, limb, injury, or property destruction just because I want to get through this intersection 3.4 seconds quicker. That's insanity for me personally. So that's how you approach risk. Now, how do you approach danger? And what's the difference between the two? Now, danger means that something's about to happen. It's dangerous. If you are outside and it is in the middle of a thunderstorm and there's active lightning in the area, that involves a certain level of risk or a certain level of danger. There's the risk, obviously, because you're standing outside in a thunderstorm, but the danger is very real because you could stand outside in just a regular rain shower and the danger is not there. But because you added lightning to that mix, you have now taken it from something that's just risky to something that's dangerous. And it moved completely. It changed everything in an instant. Now, same thing. You're out on the highway and you get there and you're at one of those four-way stop signs and you see this other vehicle coming across into your peripheral vision. You check over and there is a dump truck coming at a very high rate of speed toward that stop sign. And in your head, you're going, there's no way that dump truck can stop in time for that stop sign. That has moved it from there's a risk of somebody running a stop sign to that dump truck looks like it's about to run that stop sign. Even if it can stop, it may not be able to stop in enough time to not hit me. I'm just going to sit tight. And that's how you deal with that danger. So The risk is the possibility of something happening. The danger really involves the severity of what can happen. If you're outside in a rainstorm, but there's no thunder or lightning in the area, your biggest danger is getting wet. Maybe slipping and falling, slip, trip, and fall type incident. But we're not talking that type of safety here. Even though I used to do that for a living. I was a safety inspector, and I did workman's comp investigations and things like that for a number of hotels and golf courses. Anyway, I did that a long time ago, and I'm fairly versed in the realm of OSHA safety and slips, trips, and falls and accident mitigation and stuff like that. But that's not here or there. We're back to the risk. So you're outside in a rain shower. The biggest danger you have is getting wet. You're outside in a thunderstorm. Well, your biggest danger now is getting hit by lightning or maybe hail. Yeah, you didn't bring that up in the other part. So there's your threat, there's your risk, and there's your danger in that scenario. And I think you can apply that basic model to all the different things that you do. Ask yourself the question, is this a risk or a danger? And what is the level of risk? And what is the severity of the danger? And in the military, we have this thing called comprehensive risk management, CRM. Not like in the real estate world with that client relationship. Man, I'm going to mess that up. I'm terrible with acronyms, but it's not that. This one is comprehensive risk management. And what that means is we have these fancy charts where we take and look at all types of different things, and we determine likelihood and severity on, I'm getting my axes all messed up. Likelihood and severity on two different axes, and we plot points along for all these different things that we can think of. We have our overall mission, and then we have all the things that we need to do in order to accomplish that mission broken down underneath it. So that's how we address risk in the Army. Now, that's very complicated and takes a long time, and we have to have that reviewed and signed off on by senior officers, and it's kind of a pain. But the stuff I'm talking about is really simple. Risk, danger. Is there a risk? Yes or no? What's the likelihood? High, low, no chance. Absolutely no chance of happening. That's a good example for that is if you live in a tropical environment, you live in a warm environment. Right now, as I speak this, Hurricane Irma is bearing down through the Caribbean and possibly up to Florida. The track has changed a little bit, but nonetheless, the severity or the likelihood of something happening down there is significantly elevated for this in terms of a hurricane. Is a hurricane likely in Florida? Yes. Right now? Yeah, very, very much so. South Carolina? Absolutely. Georgia? Yes, absolutely. South Dakota? Not so much. So if you live in South Dakota right now, you're looking at the news and watching this hurricane coverage going, oh, that stinks. Doesn't affect me. So there is a really easy example of how different things, or the likelihood and the risk that's involved, can change for everybody. Now that's on two big giant states and regions in the U.S. Think about it on an individual level. What do you do every day that other agents and other people you do that you know do or do not do? And how does that relate to them? You could flip that from that North Dakota, Florida example, and you could say for severe thunderstorms and blizzards, whereas somebody living in North Dakota is going to want to consider what to do in the event of a blizzard, but somebody in Florida, yeah, not so much. So it's individually based, and all these general platitudes of everybody needs to do this, everybody needs to meet at the office, everybody needs to check ID, everybody needs to carry pepper spray, everybody needs to get a weapon, everybody needs to take self-defense. That is ridiculous, because not everybody has the same set of tools, not everybody has the same risk and same dangers as everybody else. Everybody's a little bit different. If I was 6'10" and weighed 300 pounds, my ability to ward off dangers and threats would be different than it is as a 5'10", 170-pound dude. If I was a little bit younger, maybe that would change as well. But it changes for everybody. So that's kind of the risk idea. And the danger is this something that is going to be slightly disruptive, not disruptive, or it's going to change my life forever? I mean, if you're in a high-speed automobile accident, if that's the danger of you running off the road and tumbling down a mountain into a fiery ball, which only happens in the movies, it could, but the tumbling off the mountain part, it happens, but the big fiery ball, anyway. That's the part that that's a very severe life-changing thing. So maybe you want to slow down going around those curvy mountain roads so you don't end up in a fiery crash in the bottom of a ravine. That's bad. That's obviously a life-changing event. But if this is just something that inconveniences you a little bit, okay, big deal. Big deal. I mean, what's the danger? What is the real danger? The problem that comes across or that comes out in real estate is that we associate danger with losing a client. It's the same emotion. It's that same fear. We have the fear of losing a client. And that falls all the way over onto the danger side, not the risk side. Is there a chance that you could lose a client because you do certain things a certain way? Yeah, absolutely. But is there a real danger of it? What's the impact? What is the impact of somebody that you were just uncomfortable with? Every time you meet with them and talk with them, they make you feel uncomfortable, or they boss you around. There are clients who are bullies. There are agents who are bullies. Now, maybe those two get along great together, but maybe they don't. But what clients are you meeting with? And what is the risk of losing them and not losing them? What is the risk of having something bad happen versus having something not so bad happen? That's how you can, in the real estate world, we associate so strongly with the fear of losing a client because we want them to meet at the office. And that's why nobody does it. It's the same emotion when it comes to bodily harm, when it comes to physical violence or sexual violence or those types of things. It's the same danger. It's the same emotional reaction, that fear that people try to avoid. Because again, you have the two basic human drivers of emotions, and that's to seek pleasure and avoid pain. And people will do a lot to avoid pain. They will make compromises. They will ignore real danger, ignore relevant risk in order to avoid the pain of confronting someone and appearing to be mean or hard to work with or something to that effect. And the real estate industry is not helping you out. The real estate industry is out there trying to tell you how to handle objections instead of solve problems. You're taught to deflect, and you're taught to say something that's different in order to knock that client off of their feet a little bit, to get them back to where you want them to be. And this leads you to believe that you just need to say something in order to get out of all these situations and not do something. And I'm here to tell you, when it comes to actual risk and actual danger, if you're standing outside in the thunderstorm, the best action is not to talk to the thunderstorm, it's to go inside. Right? But we don't do that. We want to talk our way out of things. We want to talk our way through things. We want to get that script. We want to get that app. We want to get that thing. I'm going to put this thing in my pocket. And then, if I get all the way up to that situation and something bad is happening, I can pull out that pepper spray and point it, I think this way. I don't know. I've never used this thing before. I don't know how to use it. All right. Had to play on that a little bit. And then you get the guy who's got the gun. And they've practiced at the range and they've shot a whole bunch of times and they've put a whole bunch of holes in paper. Maybe they've shot some cans and done some things like that. But now there's another human being at the end of their barrel. And that changes things significantly. Because the minute you decide to pull that trigger and send a round down range, your life has changed forever. Forever. It's not an option you get to take back. You don't get to put the bullet back in the gun. Once you've made that decision, your life has changed forever. And you better hope you get it right. You better hope you had just cause. You better hope that wasn't a cell phone that they were reaching for in their pocket. That it was, in fact, a gun. And I'm not telling you not to carry. I'm not. Believe me, I'm not. I'm just telling you to understand the risk and the danger associated with your actions. Is there a risk when you carry a gun that the bad guy could take it from you? Yeah, but maybe not. I don't know. I don't actually hear of that many of those scenarios. But you have to make that determination for yourself about whether or not that is a risk you're willing to take, and if the danger is severe enough that you won't do it, or that you will. You're willing to accept the risk to carry a gun to protect yourself, understanding that the possibility is that it could be taken away from you. Understanding that you're going to accept the risk of carrying a firearm, knowing that using it unlawfully or wrongly could mean that you end up in jail or worse. You have to understand all of those things. You have to understand the risk. You have to understand how all of those things work, and you have to make a decision. This is not a decision that anybody, myself or anybody, can ever tell you, this is how you need to act. This is how you need to do things. You need to do this. Everybody should fill in the blank. It's just wrong. It's patently wrong, and it's false and absurd. So that's risk and danger. We understand that safety utopia doesn't. There is no destination. Safety first is a lie. There's no magical balanced happy land where all of this comes out, because danger is real, but fear isn't. Fear is an emotion, and fear is how you determine, is how you deal with all those things. Does that mean that I'm telling you not to be fearful? No, absolutely not. We just all process fear in a little bit of a different way. I will never, ever, as long as I live, forget that very first moment when we left the confines of the IZ, more commonly known as the Green Zone in Baghdad, to head out onto the streets for the first time. And there was nobody in front of us, nobody in front of me, nothing but the streets of Baghdad. Just windshield, the guys I had with me, and straight out Baghdad. I will never, ever forget that moment. I can still picture it. I can see it, hear it, smell it. I can be there just like that. Was I scared? Absolutely. Did I feel scared? No, not really. To be honest, I was just so focused on everything that I had trained and planned for up until that moment. It was time to execute. Receive, and it's the stimulus response. Here's a stimulus, respond that way. I've already planned it out. If this happens, that's what I'm doing. If this happens, that's what I'm doing. If this happens, that's what I'm doing. If that happens, then I'm doing that. That doesn't work, I'm doing that. And I'm doing them like this. I'm doing them rapid fire, and I'm going to make decisions and then correct along the way. That's my method. That's my plan. I do recommend speed over lack of speed. Speed can save you. Indecision will kill you. But that was my method, and that was, yes, were we scared? We all were. All of us. There's 17 of us usually on a team, sometimes smaller than that, depending on the size mission that we had. So we were small teams. And were we scared? Yes, absolutely. But it was my job as their leader. It still sounds weird saying that, but it's my job as their leader to make sure that fear wasn't the thing that was running the day, that they were reacting because of their training. They were reacting because of the person that was next to them, person in front of them, person behind them. I did that backwards. Person behind them, person in front of them. They were reacting, and they were making decisions based on what was best for the group and what was best for the whole and what was best to preserve life. I can't ask much more than that. Were we scared? Absolutely. But you've all heard the acronym, fear is false expectations appearing real. But sometimes they are real. Sometimes there's good things to be scared about. That's that fear. So are you scared? Are you fearful? Are you more fearful that you're going to lose a client or that something bad is going to happen to you? I don't know. I can't make that decision for you, because you have to determine where you fall in your own personal ability to react to those things that happen. Because it's not about, nobody rises up to the occasion. I would never, ever in 1,000 years grab some guy off the street. Thinking back to my time in Baghdad, I would never just walk down the IZ, see a guy in an army uniform that looked about like me. Okay, all right, you come with me. You're going on our convoy. You're going on our mission. Not a chance. I need to know that person. I need to know what their training is, and I need to be able to rely on it, because no one just rises to the occasion. People fall back on their highest level of training. Let me say that again. People don't rise to the occasion. They fall back onto their highest level of training. Now, sometimes that's physical training, sometimes, and more often than not, it's emotional training. For me personally, I ran through every scenario and every mission that we ever ran in my head. I don't know how many times. As much time as I had, as much as I can handle it. I tried to think about every move we were going to make and picture every street and picture every person that we were going to meet there, and every vehicle and every scenario and every overpass and every intersection and every building and every balcony that was above us. I tried to picture everything that I could possibly picture before we actually executed the mission. That was me. Not everybody else. I mean, and I certainly don't do that now that I'm at home. I don't think about going to the grocery store and spend half a day planning to go to the grocery store trying to figure out, well, I don't know, I should go down aisle 6 first because that's where the rice is. And if I do that, I can put that on the bottom because I don't want to get the bananas first because then I'll put the rice on top of the bananas and I'll bruise the banana. Are you kidding? I mean, how many times have you gone to the store and just ended up going, nuts, I should have gotten that later because now I got to rearrange the cart. I mean, come on. Nobody wants to live in that state of mind where you're constantly living in fear and you're living thinking that the next bad thing that's going to happen is lurking around the next corner. So I don't ever want you to think about those types of things from that perspective. I want you to train your brain first. Train your brain to understand what it is that your body's going to do next. Because it's not enough just to follow your instincts, because most of us don't have instincts that are good enough to be able to react appropriately. This is how accidents happen. You know, people go, oh, well, I thought that person was going to go left, and they went right. Because your instinct said that, oh, well, that's what I do in most cases. And your instincts can lead you wrong. Instead, one of the big things, and one thing that military training does, is that it teaches you to override your instincts and replace them with action that is beneficial. And that's why you have drill sergeants and stuff like that. These guys are yelling at you constantly because you got to disrupt your thought patterns and get off of that crap that you brought into the table. How many of you got in a car for the first time and drove perfectly? Understood how everything worked. You understood how the brakes worked. You understood how the accelerator worked, how the steering wheel, how shifting gears. You were able to anticipate how much space you needed to stop, how much space you needed to steer. No one, absolutely no one gets into a car for the first time and doesn't make some sort of a mistake, probably drastic ones. I don't know anybody that didn't at least bump into something when they're first learning how to drive, and some people still bump into a lot of stuff because they're not very good drivers, maybe because they weren't trained very well. But the idea is that you don't just hop into a car, something that we all do, we all take for granted, and all of a sudden you've got all these instincts that are saying, hey, you know, I'm awesome now. I can do anything in the world. It's not true. You practice, and then you imagine. You ever have one of those things and you're driving in your car and somebody did something and you know you're safe, but you're like, wow, that could have gone really bad. What if I had done that? That would have been really bad. Maybe I should not do that from now on. That's probably a good idea. And you start thinking through some of these things that you're going to change and do things a little bit differently. Have you ever burned yourself on the stove or grabbed something hot and you go, I didn't mean to do that? Because that was your instinct. Your instinct was like, yeah, it's fine. And then you grab it and you go, oh, not fine. That burnt my hand pretty bad. So people don't rise to the occasion. They fall back on their highest level of training. So if you don't have a lot of training, the chances of your instincts being sufficient, it's slim to none. I'm going to go into instincts at a later date on one of these future sessions, so I don't want to beat that one up too much. But suffice to say that there are things that you can do to influence your instincts. And more importantly, not trying to tell everybody to be Jason Bourne or the next, mind reader or something like that, but the action that comes as a result of your instinct is the most important thing. Just recognizing an instinct and going, I knew something was wrong. Yeah, you didn't do anything about it, so that's kind of pointless, right? I knew you were going to say that. That's an instinct. No, it's not. No, it's not. That's retroactive. Anyway, I'm not going to beat that up too much right here, right now, but understand that your instincts have limitations. And when it comes to safety and dealing with real danger and real risk, your instincts are not the thing that you need to rely on as your primary source. I'm not saying ignore instincts. I'm saying understand them for what they are. And sometimes they're designed not to help you. Pardon me. So lastly, the last piece I want to talk about this particular session is how, in terms of the safety illusion, is the idea that safety is a technical problem. You see this a lot with things like phone apps and safety apps and any kind of tool that you put in your pocket. That's technology. Whether you share your location with your Find My Phone feature, whether you have a GPS map capabilities, whether you tell somebody where you're going and you leave a piece of paper, you have a text, you have an automatic dialer, you have a panic button, you have whatever. Safety is not a technical problem. It's not solved with technology. There are pieces of technology that can help if you've already got a plan, you've already got a setup or a setup. Now, I don't mean a plan like you got to sit down and write out a bunch of stuff and then put it on a piece of paper and then sign off on it and have your broker look at it and then go about your business. That's not what I mean at all. Plans are pretty much useless. Planning is critical. You can have a plan all day long, and I'll quote Mike Tyson here, that everybody has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. That was very, very apparent if you got hit in the mouth by Mike Tyson. Because if you got hit in the mouth by Mike Tyson in his prime, in his day, chances are, you're not going to remember a lot that happened after that. So everybody has a plan, but it goes out the window as soon as the first bullets fly, as they say. So it's not about having the plan, but it's about understanding what it is that you are going to do and having a system in place. What are your limits? What will you do? What will you not do? What are you going to do if? What are you going to do if? And it's not these hard, concrete things. You just have to know that when something is wrong, I basically have 3, 4 things, maybe 5 things that I'm going to do at any one given time. And those are the things that I'm going to do every time. I mean, whether that's walk out of the house because you felt uncomfortable, whether that's say no to meeting that client that you've never met before, whether it's after you meet the client and you go, look, I just don't feel comfortable with you. I'm sorry, but we're going to have to postpone this, or we're going to have to, make some other arrangement. The real simple things that you're going to do to avoid the bad thing from happening. It's not about, well, I felt creepy and I didn't really like this person that I met and it made me feel uncomfortable, but I've got pepper spray in my purse, so I'm good, right? Oh, well, I've got pepper spray in my purse and I've got this phone app. I'm good, right? I've got this pepper spray in my purse. I've got this phone app, and I told somebody where I was going to be going, right? I'm good? No, not really. I mean, how does that help you at all? Maybe some of those things help you a little bit if the bad thing happens. But I hope, again, one of those things that I hope you're getting from this is you want to be left of boom. You want to be ahead of the problem. You don't want the problem to happen. You want it to not happen. You don't want to react to the problem. You want to keep it from happening in the first place. So safety is not a technological problem. It isn't solved with a gun. It isn't solved with pepper spray. It isn't solved with an app, with a tool, with a policy, with magic beans, or with your cousin Frank, who's a retired cop. None of those things help. It's a social problem. It's a social problem because we don't have the social confidence and the social skills to be able to say, look, I'm sorry, but this is going to have to end here. There's just a few things that, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just I'm not hearing something right. Maybe I'm just tired and I apologize for that. But I don't think I can show you this house today. And that's it. And then you stick with it. You don't let them talk you back down off of the ledge. And that's your social skills at work. If you feel uncomfortable, it is your duty and your obligation to your family members and those who love you to not pursue it any further. That's it. Now I'm going to hear these tough guy types out there because there's always plenty of them. Sometimes it's tough girls too. I'll be honest. Some of the feistiest people I've ever met were females, and they thought they're like, I'm always carrying. They practice all the time, and they're really good at shooting, and they're really good at Krav Maga, and they've got all these different things down. And that's great, but really the idea is to not get in a fight. I don't know about you, but I don't want to get into a fight. Even the UFC guys, the Ultimate Fighting UFC Ultimate Fighting Championship mixed martial arts guys, that's a sport. There aren't a lot of rules in UFC, but there still are rules. Crotch grabbing and eye gouging and stuff like that is not allowed. In the real world, that stuff's very much allowed. The bad guy is going to do anything that they need to do to disable you quickly. We talked about the Mexican mafia learning human anatomy yesterday about how to disable a human body the quickest and most efficient way. So if the bad guys are operating under those contexts, you need to be operating under a context that is so hard, fast, and firm, and socially communicable. That's not what I mean. That's more like a disease. But you have to be able to talk about this stuff. You have to be able to explain your situation and your scenario completely and clearly. If you're in a house and all of a sudden that person that you think was a nice guy starts getting creepy, starts getting close, starts getting grabby, that's not the time to enter into a discussion about how you make me feel. It's time to get the hell out of the house. It's time to leave. It's time to go. Because bad guys lie. Bad guys are good at not getting caught, most of them. The ones who get caught easily are probably in jail, and they're fairly easy to spot because they're wearing funny colored jumpsuits and cutting grass on the side of the road, if you even run into them. But the rest of them who are very good at not getting caught, yeah, those guys are very good at not getting caught and getting what they want and doing what they do. There is such a thing as a career criminal. And the guys that who are targeting and attacking real estate agents, they're not pickpockets. They're not opportunists. They're planning their craft, if you will, for weeks. They're looking for a victim and what they can get and thinking about what they can get from that victim and whether or not they can get away with it. And then how they need to get away with it. What they need to say and do in order to get exactly what it is that they want and get away with it. That's how they're thinking. And if you're not acknowledging that, again, this is kind of a preview into one of those three dimensions of survival that I talked about before. One of them was environment, and the second one is know thy enemy. Know the other guy. And it's not just about the enemy, it's about all people. But in this context, it's about the bad guy. Understand that that bad guy can flip on a switch, because the whole time he's been telling you one thing, but he's been thinking another. Jeffrey Dahmer, for those of you who aren't, Ted Bundy, for those of you who aren't familiar with that serial killer who admitted to killing like 30 people, he had a series of aliases. I think it was 7. He had 7 different aliases that he went by, and he was a teacher. And everybody thought, this was one of those cases which you hear so often is like, we had no idea that he was doing those things. He seemed like, he was a quiet guy. He was a nice guy. Never really bothered anybody. And I'm not telling you to go out there and be fearful of the quiet guys and the people who don't bother anybody. I'm telling you that you need to understand how bad guys operate, and sometimes they can change on a dime. And you need to be able to change on a dime with them. If the situation starts turning south, it's time for you to get from here to way over there. Get off the X. We talked about that yesterday. So that's about what I want to leave you with today. I'm going to check my comments here. I hope this whole thing has gone through fairly well. I still get a kind of a nasty gram when I look at my streaming status. So bear with me on that one. Excuse me again. Trying to get over this cold too. Not a real good time to start a whole bunch of speaking engagements, but we'll get through this. And this is day 2. There's going to be another Facebook live episode tomorrow. So if you are not following me on Facebook, you need to do that now. Go down, like and follow. There will be announcements coming up for that. Also, if you want a little bit more information on this upcoming schedule, some of the things that we're going to talk about, and some of these behind the scenes things, you can do that. I'm also going to put that link down below, as well as an opportunity for you to ask questions and comment on these types of things if you're not in this chat live. I hope that you can participate in some of these live, but if you can't, I understand. We had technical difficulties, and in this situation, I'm sure a lot of people bailed because of that. But if you can't participate live and you still want to submit a comment, and maybe you just want to submit one now for something we'll talk about in the future, that's great. Do that below. I've got a place to do that. Got a real quick 5-question survey and just a big comment box where you can leave any type of feedback that you want, as well as links to more information and resources that have available that you're not going to get from your association, be that local, state, or national. They are doing the National Association of Rabbits. I'm going to use that name from now on just so I don't get in trouble. The National Association of Rabbits is putting on 2 seminars in the entire month of September. The Safety Month, the REALTOR Safety, the Rabbit Safety Month that they have declared and created on their own, and they're doing two webinars all month. Okay, well, I'm going to do 12. Not because I'm better than they are, but because I've got the skills, I've got the experience, and I've got the knowledge, and I want to share that out with you. Like I've said before on so many of these safety events, I'm married with 3 small girls. I've got sisters. I've got, mother-in-laws and grandmothers, and This is the stuff that I teach them, that I want them to know. My daughters are a little bit young for most of this, but it's something that they're going to know as they grow up. I used to always joke that there's two things that my daughters are going to be able to understand or know how to do, and that's shoot and fight. While that's true, the idea is I want them to avoid the problem in the first place, because I don't want any of my daughters come home one day saying, well, I just don't want to think about that too much. But I don't want my daughters to come home and explain and have this horrible story about something bad that happened to them. I don't want that. I don't want that for them. I don't want that for anybody. I want them to avoid the problem in the first place. The very idea that one of my daughters coming home could say, "Daddy, I shot and killed a guy today who was trying to hurt me." That is not a good story. That is not a good day. That's not a good thing. A good thing is saying, "Daddy, I had a bad feeling today about this guy, and I left and nothing happened." That's a good story. That makes me happy. Now then, me being daddy and who I am, I'm going to start breaking down that scenario, going, what did they look like? What did they say? How did they react? What did you do? How did you react? That's going to be me. But that's a better story. Saying, "Daddy, I thought something might happen today and it didn't." Then, yep, shot a guy. Wow. Pretty easy for me to draw that distinction. So I hope you're getting something out of this. If you would, please do me a favor. Hit the like button down below. Share this video out to other folks who might need to hear a little bit of a different perspective. I thank you all so much for your patience and your willingness to put up with me going through this entire scenario today with all the technical difficulties and everything else. But thank you for participating. Thank you for joining in this. And please help. This isn't costing anybody anything except me and you a little bit of time. So do me a favor, share this out, get this message out so we can start combating some of that bad information that's out there and start actually changing the way people think and act. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.